I'm Shana Magantal. This is Ted Lied. We're doing a live version of Ted's podcast, which is called Learning Not to Swear. You can find it on...
You can find it everywhere. It's everywhere the podcasts are downloaded. It's on iHeartRadio. It's on Stitcher. It's on Spotify, iTunes, all the Apple platforms. Wherever you find podcasts, you can subscribe. Learning Not to Swear with Ted Lied. We talk about life. We talk about the struggles and the challenges and the celebration of moving forward, which is, what's that? That's the point. That's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to move forward in life or else you can't do anything.
Even when you don't think there's a point to moving forward, move forward. We're going to cover some Michael Jackson topics.
Yep.
And we're going to cover, we were both at Christoph St. John's memorial service, and we're going to cover that a little and talk about we both were very much friends and people who love Christoph St. John and knew him personally, so we'll cover some of that.
Yeah.
I didn't know Michael personally, but she did, which is awesome. Give me a mic check.
Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2.
Oh, so nice. There we go. Hi, welcome to Learning Not to Swear with Ted Lied. I'm your host, Ted Lied. This is the podcast where we talk about life. We talk about the challenges and the celebrations and the moving forward in life when it seems very difficult, when it seems like life is hard and you want to give up. That's what we do. We talk about how to stay positive, how to stay motivated, and how to not get bogged down in our own feelings and our own suffering, which is, no one is immune to that. So that's what we do here, and that's what we're going to do today. Today I'm talking to Shana Magantal. She's like maybe her 5th or 6th visit to the podcast. Her episodes are always very well liked and very, very well downloaded, which is okay with me. I like that. Aside from her being a lovely person to talk to.
Thank you, Ted. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. Every time I come, we always have something to talk about.
Yes.
So this time is no different.
This time is no different. Last time you were here, we talked about Joe Jackson's funeral.
Yeah.
And my feelings, my strong feelings and opinions about Joe, and you're very sympathetic and very, very forgiving, which is a quality that sometimes it's hard for me to get a hold of. But that was the last time we talked. It was if you haven't listened to that, you can go find that conversation. It's a very funny conversation, very heartfelt.
Yeah, it was great. I also put it on my YouTube channel, which is Shana Magantal, which I'll be uploading this to my YouTube as well. So you'll be able to see the visual as well as hear the audio.
There you go.
And yeah. So
let's dive in.
All right.
When was Christoph's? It seems like one of my methods of coping is to put distance between actual events and my emotions. Mm-hmm. So that seems like a year ago to me that we were at Christoph's memorial service, when in fact it was when?
A couple of weeks ago. No, when was it? It was March 3rd?
March 3rd.
I think it was March 3rd or 4th.
All right, so about a month or so ago.
And the crazy thing is that it was the same day that Leaving Neverland premiered on HBO. So
oh my God.
It was, it's been a rough couple of months with Leaving Neverland being announced in January, and then all of the craziness that's been going on regarding it online. And then Christoph passed away, Super Bowl Sunday?
Yeah, the 3rd?
February 3rd.
February 3rd, yeah.
And then we had his funeral about a month later, maybe March 3rd, something like that. And then Leaving Neverland aired on television. So it's been really tough. Yeah,
so let's talk about Leaving Neverland. I know that I didn't see it. I had the opportunity to watch it, and I just couldn't. I didn't. Like I said, part of my method of moving forward is not to rehash too many things that have broken my heart, or things that make me sad, or things that are just painful. Is to sometimes once you fold that little blanket up of sorrow and sadness, then you have to put it away. And so pull it back out and just sniff it and smell it again is not something I just didn't want to do it. But I know that Oprah and everybody piled onto this thing.
Yeah, it was quite surprising for me to see Wade Robson and Jimmy Safechuck, of all people, come out against Michael, because I mean, I was there during that exact time. I lived through the moments that Leaving Neverland covered, you know, that whole sort of early 90s era. And Wade and Jimmy were treated like royalty by Michael, their whole family. Michael gave Wade his entire career, basically. He taught him how to dance and mentored him. He gave him a record deal.
And which one did he give a record deal to?
Wade.
Really?
He had a rap group called Quo. It was him and this other little boy, and it was on MJJ Records. And Wade really owes his entire life to Michael. So I never in a million years thought that he or Jimmy would go against him. So it was pretty difficult to watch that.
So were these guys? I thought that they were guys who had previously been had settlements made in the past in regards of accusations. So these guys had never had any settlements.
No, they were defending Michael up until this time. So that's why it was so. It's been really, you know, difficult for me, for Michael's fans, because these were some of Michael's biggest defenders and supporters, and so for them to, you know, completely change their tune all of these years later, it was devastating, and it was hard to process. You know, I watched it. I watched all 4 hours. I even watched the Oprah interview after. And
what was your takeaway? Let's start with the Oprah interview. Mm-hmm. Did they seem like just guys who are out for money and out to get a few more nickels?
No, and I think that's why a lot of people believe it, you know, because they did. Well, Wade, I won't say Wade, because Wade sort of has no emotion. He kind of comes off as like a serial killer, where he just has no emotion, right. And he can just speak about, you know, the worst things and just have absolutely no emotion. So he was not easy to believe. But Jimmy, on the other hand, he really seemed broken, and I think a lot of people sort of felt sympathy towards him. The people who did believe it, I think without Jimmy, Wade wouldn't have had any chance to make people believe this.
No traction.
Yeah, but Jimmy was a little bit more sympathetic. So but the documentary itself, the first 40 minutes were amazing. Like, it was all positive. It showed videos and pictures that were never seen before of Michael's, and it was great, actually. I cried those first 40 minutes. But then, like, at exactly the 40-minute mark, it takes a turn, and it just becomes really difficult to watch.
The fact that someone seems credible doesn't always mean that they're telling the truth. I mean, that's the first thing you have to say. Whoever this other person who's not Wade, you said that he seemed, you know, truly broken and incredible. But timelines and details have to bear themselves out.
Right.
When you make an accusation like this.
Well, the thing is, I mean, yeah, they were good friends with Michael. They were with him all the time, Jimmy in particular. And a lot of stuff that they said did happen, but not the sex stuff, you know. So it was easy for them to sort of add that bad part in, because right. The other stuff, the good stuff, actually did happen. So it's hard for people who weren't there and who don't know, for them to say, oh, well, they're lying, because a lot of what they said was true, right. Just not the other, you know, bad stuff.
I worry about stuff like that in my own podcast, because I have a lot of women like yourself here to do the podcast, and the house is empty because it's quiet when the house is empty. I have a special needs son, and he's very loud and gregarious, and so the best way to do the podcast is when he's not home, and when he's not home, usually no one else is home. So, but that's one of my fears, is like, well, all it takes is one person to say, hey, you know what Ted Lai did to me? And for me to be like, you know, have to have no proof.
Right.
Outside, I don't have cameras set up, and that seems to be the answer to everything now. You have
right.
Cameras.
Ring or whatever it's called.
Yeah, something in every room. There needs to be a, you know.
Yeah, that was Michael's biggest weakness. He was so nice. He was so giving, and he was open. Like, when I went to Neverland, I knocked on the door. The chef answered the door, and the first thing the chef asked me was, "What do you want to eat for lunch?" Like he just welcomed everybody in, you know. And his
cool.
chef was your chef. His rooms were your room. I had full run of the house. And that's how he was to everyone. So if you had bad intentions, it would be pretty easy to accuse him of things. And that's what's really sad. You know, nice people, nice guys finish last. Yeah. And Michael was one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, one of the most polite. I've witnessed him with kids. We did 2 short films, Is It Scary and Ghosts, where kids were the main cast. So I spent day in and day out with Michael with kids. Ghosts took about a month to film, and we were on set for...
And at no point in any of those, during those events, did he behave in a sinister...
No.
Well, he wasn't lurking around the corner?
No. He was one of them. Like, what he loved about children was their innocence. And that's what he liked about me, you know, to be honest, because I was extremely innocent back then. And I was sort of like one of the kids as well.
Still pretty innocent,
Still. But yeah, so I mean, all day long we were just playing practical jokes on each other and playing games. The kids would play video games with him.
Right.
There was nothing ever, and trust me, if I ever suspected something back then, I would tell you, and I would not still be here defending him. I also introduced Brighton McClure, who is now Brighton James, who is on Young and the Restless. I introduced him to Michael. He was about 5. I would have never introduced him to Michael if I ever thought there was anything bad going on. And trust me, I know people who knew Michael at that time as well. And we've all talked, and you know, everyone has watched it that I know, and we all agree that, you know, this just couldn't have happened the way they said it did, because we never suspected it.
It's a pretty big secret to keep under wraps. Any kind of deviance or creepiness is hard to hide over a span of time.
I was part of his management team.
Yeah.
We got all the dirt. Like it would come to us first, and then we would filter it to Michael, and then we'd have to, you know, figure out how to deal with it. And so I, more than anyone, would know if something like that had ever been spoken about, whispered about, and there never was. None of us ever thought that about Michael. We were concerned that he was so open and so nice. We were like, why are you, you know, inviting these random strange families into your life like this, and buying them things, and, you know, sending them on trips and getting them gifts? That, even back then, I was like, you know, that's not a smart thing to do, because kids are innocent, but their parents are not.
Always have ulterior motives.
Yeah.
You know, and ulterior motive, when I say that, I mean, I have an ulterior motive, and that is to pay my mortgage. It's always underneath every decision I make. How can I pay this mortgage? So if I have access to a guy who's just handing out money and is blatantly vulnerable in his, you know, ideas and theology about, you know, conduct or secrets or what appears to be a conduct or then if I'm unscrupulous, my agenda to pay my mortgage is going to take the wheel and go, hell, hey, he was in that room with my kid for 15 minutes, unsupervised.
And you see this guy, I mean, Michael, his whole personality was just nice, you know, like he was open. You could see that if you were an adult, and you could see where you might be able to take advantage of that if you were not a nice person. The kid, that's why, see, Michael never ever blamed any of the kids.
Right there. And not to say I'm not a nice person, because like I said, I'm a nice person, but my daughter's about to start college in 4 months. So if she was rich and started being all willy-nilly with her riches, and I saw a window to maybe exploit, that would be my driving influence, not that I'm bad.
Not like you're evil.
How can I? Like, wait a minute.
You're just, I mean, many people in this world are money driven, sadly.
Yeah.
And you know, while Michael was treating them like royalty, they were fine. While, you know, they were benefiting from the fruits of his niceness.
And then once they
Once
get,
it ran
it's
out.
like a conveyor belt. And once the flavor of the month or however long goes on down the line, and then there's a new person who's getting that attention and those accolades, rewards, whatever you want to call them, then yeah, I felt that way. We all felt that way, where someone who we thought was our friend who had value in that their attention shifts. You do feel.
I felt that way.
Yeah.
Like I could totally have, you know, gone the other direction. You know, the same thing happened to me.
Now I gotta crucify him.
That's ridiculous to me. I can't control what he does or what his feelings are. You know, I know what I felt, and I know I would have loved to have stayed in his life forever, but that's not up to me to decide. That's not up to anyone to decide. And you can't get upset, you know, and try to destroy someone because
you can get even if people
I
act like they don't remember that you was the one who went to Disneyland for free with them.
Right. Like for me, what Michael did for me, I'll always be loyal to him, and I'll always be grateful for. You know, he changed my life. He was, you know, wonderful. And I know he changed the lives of many of those kids and all the adults who were surrounding those kids. So for them to now come out and try to destroy him and his legacy, that's just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Let me ask you this. So there was some backlash on the whole thing because Oprah pulled her interview down.
No, she didn't. Okay. But that's the other thing.
So now she pulled it off of.
No, there's been a lot of misinformation on both sides. I will say a lot of propaganda on both sides, and because I was part of Michael's management team and we dealt with publicity, I can see it like as soon as it's happening. You know,
there's trickery
there's some trickery going on. You know, I mean, Michael, his estate, I'm sure they're trying to, you know, combat these things that are out there by putting out their own things. Right. So, I mean, just be aware.
Was there no backlash as far as HBO or anybody stepping back from the film?
Not that I know of. I mean, it's on Netflix, I think, in the UK coming up soon. And I mean, HBO doesn't show things forever. It's still online, on streaming.
Yeah, you can find it on
there's
HBO Now and all that.
Yeah, HBO, Oprah, they're not going to get behind something like this unless they truly believe in it and they're passionate about it. So those people in particular, they're not going to go back.
I read that so maybe this is part of the propaganda, that there has been some timeline disputes in certain claims in the movie. There were so and so said this happened during this time. And you're like, well, that couldn't be true because he was over here at that time or what have you.
The fact is, Jordy too, but Wade and Jimmy, they were with Michael a lot. So whether it happened in 1989 or 1991, he probably was at Neverland, you know, and whatever month it was, it really doesn't make a difference. When you're 8 or 10 or 12, you're not going to remember details. I would not remember anything from my 20s even if I hadn't written it down in my diary. This stuff is hard to remember. So even that, you know, the stuff about the timeline, I don't even take that into account. For me, what I've been going on is just my personal experience with Michael and who I knew him to be as a man.
I think that if you're an adult now and you're going to cast dispersions that, you know, destroy a man's reputation, when you haven't cast those dispersions in the past, then details are relevant, and whether you were a kid when it happened, when it allegedly happened or not, there must be some proof or details that bear out and hold your story to reality. Otherwise, anybody can say anything. Anybody who's done my podcast can say anything. I was
Ted's
there.
a little nervous here.
I don't know. Well, it's true, because I was there, and y'all don't know. But what month were you there? I was in 2014. Ted's podcast didn't start till late 2015. So, you know, you can't say that doesn't matter. It matters.
Well, I mean, if you were to ask me when the first time I did your podcast was, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Right. But if you said 2014, I'm going to take that onto my side of the argument, because that's not right. That's wrong, and she's saying crazy stuff.
for me, fans, I get that they have to, grasp onto every little inconsistency. For me personally, though, all I do is remember who Michael was towards me, what I personally witnessed with him and kids. And for me, that's the most important thing. I don't really care about any of the other stuff because I have that perspective, thankfully, that I can go back on and say, you know what? Michael would never do something like that to a child because that's just not the Michael Jackson that any of us knew. And so I just can't imagine that he would just, be completely different.
And like I said, usually in my experience with creepy people is that you get a whiff. At some point you get a whiff of that creepiness and you go, I don't want to be around you anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't, they don't have the shield up all the time. Their predilections and attractions seep out.
Yeah, you can sort of sense it, right? And with Michael, everybody wanted to be around him. It was the opposite. Like, he was a magnet for people because people could see the goodness in him. They saw his innocence. His innocence rubbed off on everybody else. Like, the most hardened thug type men, they would suddenly love cartoons and video games if they were hanging around Michael. That was just who he was. And I think that a lot of people misunderstood it because no one was like Michael. He was a magical, unique human being that we're never going to see again in this lifetime, probably in any lifetime. No. So he wasn't like your normal person.
I agree.
And people just didn't understand that. And so as much as I can, I will always defend him, and I'll always love him unconditionally. And all I can do is just keep telling everyone, what I experienced and the truth, basically. So I hope I can help in that way because it's important to me and to his legacy.
I want to talk to these guys. If you have any leads on how to get
get them on Learning Not to Swear.
What was his name?
Wade Robson and
hold on.
James.
One at a time. Wade, if you're watching this, or if any of your people are watching this, come talk to me. Come talk to me. I won't bite you. I want to ask you some questions. I'm no Oprah, but that doesn't mean we can't chat. And what's the other guy's name?
James Safechuck.
Come on, James. Come on, man. Seriously. No, that's all I gotta say about James, because James was the one that you said he had the most love.
Broken.
He got the most love.
And the thing is, they both say they still love Michael, so it's hard to go against that because I bet you do still love Michael. How do you not? All that he did for you, there's no way you could not love Michael. So I just don't understand how they can just switch their loyalty all of a sudden, loving him all of these years, all the stuff they did for him.
Stick a knife in somebody by you telling them how much you love them.
Yeah,
I love you, but
I could never do that. Like, if you guys ever see me turn against Michael, please attack me because I would never do that. It's not in my heart.
I'll have her on and I'll talk to her.
Yes.
What's your problem now? Right. Why are you tripping like that? What's up? I don't know. Okay, so you watched it and it was you watched all 4 episodes. Well, can you point out just what was the most bizarre or catastrophic thing in the stories that you were like that?
Well, the whole thing was graphic and it was just difficult to watch. Okay. But I kept watching. It was hard and it was powerful, to be honest. Like, if I didn't know Michael, I can totally see why the general public might believe it because it was done it was a very well put together.
Drake pulled his song off the air,
and that's ridiculous. But you know
Drake had a song where he sampled MJ's voice.
That's crazy. On LA radio now, I hear Michael more than ever.
Yeah, so
I heard "I Want You Back" yesterday on the radio. I never heard that, so it's not going to hurt Michael's legacy at all, in my opinion. The people who believed he was guilty before still believe it. People who think he's innocent still believe that, and it's never going to change. He's always going to be this controversial figure because he was misunderstood.
And he exercised, and the most blunt way to put it is he exercised some bad judgment in not being chaperoned and not always having someone there to say, hey, this guy is, this woman is always in the corner with, and that's how you handle those situations. You just always have a chaperone there to say, hey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why he didn't listen to.
I'm sure his manager didn't tell him, hey, listen, always have a neutral party.
Yeah, people aren't all good at heart like you are, Michael. Some people have ill intentions, and that was his weakness, really, honestly.
Well,
But I think he also didn't help himself by the image he put out of himself.
Which image was this?
He liked to sort of be mysterious and and hard to figure out, but in real life he was like this normal guy, and I think that's what's lost on the public. They don't realize that he had an everyday life. He lived day to day. He was so down to earth, and I think it's hard for people to understand. Even his fans, like I wrote a book, Michael and Me, and I wrote about some everyday things that he did, and even some of his fans are like, no, he didn't do that. Like, why not? That's what everybody does. So it's hard because he contributed to that image that people have of him today. So I think that's why it's so easy to just say, oh, he did this or he did that, because he's sort of a blank slate. No one really
I listened to your book on audible.com, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Ted.
She does the reading of the book. She reads it herself. It's very, very cool. It's very, very cool. So that's an option as well if you don't get the copy.
If you don't read, you can go to audio. And a lot of people these days, well, I'm not saying that, but
I read. I'm also. If
you're like Ted and refuse to read.
I'm in traffic. We're in Los Angeles. I'm in traffic, or I'm walking my dog, or I'm making dinner. So I would put on my own. Listen to the story. Oh, really? That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. So you obviously get a bigger cut if they buy the hard copy.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, hey, the way the world is going, people are streaming things on audio.
Don't do what I do. Don't be like me.
And Kindle. It's also on Kindle. Most people don't get the hard copy.
You get a better cut from the Kindle people.
No, hardcover is the word.
Don't listen to it on the computer. Don't read it on the computer. Go into a bookstore if you can find one. There's such thing, or you can order it online from
Amazon. You can go to Amazon and read it. And Kindle.
Don't waste your time trying to find a library.
Thank you.
All right.